Welcome one, welcome all. Another Millie Roundtable, this time for week 9. And you talk about a great couple of days of football here. We got the Miami Dolphins and Kansas City Chiefs over in Germany at 9:30. That's going to be an absolute banger of the game, arguably the best game of the day. And you got 10 NFL games in between, and then you got the Bengals and Bills to cap off the Sunday. So a full slate of football. And as always, we will have everything covered here. These 10-game slates, we'll go over for DraftKings here. And we'll also touch a little bit on FanDuel. If you guys are looking for anything for that 9:30 Eastern game over in Germany for the Dolphins Chiefs, don't forget we'll have a full course playbook and much more on the website as well, including the past optimal sheet that AP does. So get in NBA 15. It's still active. I don't know how much longer it'll be active for, but are still running the code, and you get 15% off your first payment. And I am joined by two lovely guests. I got Snyder with me. I got Drew. Snyder, how was your day? I mean, this is a college football day that saw Oklahoma get upset and a little bit of action there. How's your day?
Yeah, it's been a pretty good day so far. I had a pretty good college day on the DFS streets. Not as good as the majority of our members. I mean, there were so many screenshots in that Discord, which you just love to see. I had a pretty good day. Wasn't near as good as our guy shipping the 50K and another 20K, and there's a bunch of hits in there. But yeah, it was fun. Kind of excited to dive into the slate. We've got an interesting slate here tonight. Like all the good players are not on the slate. I know your Bengals and the Bills are playing Sunday night. You get the Chiefs and the Dolphins going early in the morning, and then a few of the teams are on byes, like the 49ers and such are on byes. So it'll be interesting to kind of dive through this slate. A lot of ugly teams on this slate, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't believe what you told me. And it's true. It's Demario Douglas potentially being the highest owned wide receiver. Drew, how do you like weeks like this where we don't have a lot of studs? I mean, obviously we got the Cowboys, Eagles late, but there's a lot of players high owned who you just wouldn't expect to be high owned. I know injuries help with that, but Singletary's 20%. Demario Douglas is approaching 30. It's a little bit weird, right?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. You're not getting the big studs with the ownership. You're getting meddling players with all the ownership. So yeah, it just makes it a different slate. But we see that with a lot of other sports with just the slate size. You'll get guys that are super chalky, or like in golf, you get like Snyder does this. You'll get a 10.5K golfer that's like 7.5K, like 50% of the other tournaments. It's just because of the strength of the field. So yeah, it is what it is. It's not a huge shock to the system, but it is interesting. It makes the lineup construction a little bit different because you think these guys fail more often. But again, it's relative to the slate. So you kind of got to deal with the context there.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the reason why these guys are, like you said, Snyder, is there's not a whole lot of star power on the slate. So these guys become a little bit more chalky, and there's only 10 games too. There's not 13 that we had last week as well. So a lot to dive in. 10 games, get us started. I will be using the Saber Sim if you're wanting to follow along. Don't forget, Saber Sim, you can always run those sims and use NBA 15. Get access to the optimizer, the sims, and RPS content for one price. The first game, the Seahawks and the Ravens. So this game actually has a little bit of potential. As we know, the Seahawks defense has been exposed in their secondary, and this has not been the case. This has been the case all season. And the Ravens, a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. Some weeks they come out looking strong. Some weeks they come out looking bad. And last week, Gus Edwards just runs a train through the entire Arizona Cardinals defense and steals every goal line touchdown. However, what we've seen the last 2 weeks, the Ravens have really stepped it up a notch, especially in the red zone. Back-to-back weeks with over 30 points, on offense. Snyder, there's a lot to like with the Ravens here. And I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to the usual three with Flowers, Andrews, and Lamar. And even a guy like Gus Edwards, after what he did last week, should get ownership on either site just because of how much of a vulture he can be. What are you doing with this first game that we have on tap?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting game to start off with here. We got the Ravens finally coming back home. They've been on the road a lot this year. 4 of the last 5 games have been on the road, so they're coming back home. The last time Lamar was at home in this stadium, he put up 37 on the Lions. He put up 32 about 5 weeks ago, the last time they played a home game. So I think I'm going to target some Lamar here, coming off a little bit of a flop leg last week where Gus Edwards got all the points there, tilted everybody. It was basically Lamar and Hurts last week and play up top, which will be similar this week. But I'm going to go right back to Lamar. I'm going to play some Lamar. Flowers again. Flowers is cheap on FanDuel and still pretty cheap on DK as well, 5.7K. So I'll have plenty of exposure there. And tight end is pretty dusty this week. I know there's a lot of guys in that like upper 2K range to mid 3K range and up to maybe like right around 4K or something. Looks pretty bad wasteland there. I think Andrews is a guy that I don't think it's going to see much ownership. It's a way to differentiate yourself. He scored in both of the home games. He scored, looks like, I guess one of the home games he scored 22 and 25. That was on the road though, but he's got a couple good games over 20 points. I think that really separate yourself at the position this week. So I'm going to be looking to add some Andrews as well. Nothing on the defensive side here. You could run it back here as well if you wanted to. The Ravens defense has been playing pretty tough this year, but you got Tyler Lockett at 6'2", Metcalf at 6'9", Smith and Jigba at 4'3". I think I would maybe lean to the upside of Lockett if I was going to run it back with someone, but I don't know if I'm going to necessarily require a run back. So I think Baltimore might dust these guys like they did the Lions at home here. They play really tough at home, and Seattle hasn't really played a tough team this year, I don't think.
Yeah, over the last few weeks, they've looked pretty pedestrian. Even against the Cardinals, they looked pretty bad. And against the Bengals, they never really got anything going as well. It's definitely a little bit of a concern in Seattle. And going on the road to Baltimore, coming from the west to the East Coast, seems like a smash spot for Baltimore to get in there. Drew, what are you doing with this Ravens side? Because Mark Andrews, especially on DraftKings, is 1,600 more than the next tight end. That's not usually the case. Usually we have Travis Kelce, on the slate. Or usually, you can even include Darren Waller and stuff like that. But obviously, they're not on the slate either. Andrews is going to be a talking point because you look at it also on FanDuel. He's 800 more than TJ Hawkinson. What are you doing with him today? He's projected for low ownership. The secondary of the Seahawks have been just vulnerable the entire season, and Andrews has been finding his groove the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think Andrews gets a little bit higher ownership than what he's projected at right now. I think the way lineup construction goes, people there's not a lot of spin ups anyway, so the tight end position will likely be a filler, and 6,800 is really not that tough to squeeze in with the way that the player pool looks. So I think he goes a little bit higher than 6%. I think Sabre has him at. I think he'll probably be in the low teens, I guess, depending on the contest. So I would just keep an eye out for that, but I'm not overly excited. I haven't played a lot of the Baltimore side. I'm not convinced that I can predict which player is going to get the majority of the production. Andrews obviously could from the tight end position in the red zone, but Zay Flowers is probably the guy for me in Baltimore. I think Lamar seemed to lean on him quite a bit. Lamar's a little bit expensive, so I just don't think this is a game I'm going to stack up. And like I said, I haven't been playing a lot of Baltimore for that reason, that Jackson can kind of vulture his own touchdowns away from his players, and you lose a little bit of correlation there. Jackson can get there, and his players don't. So like I said, I think Flowers is cheap enough that if he catches 2 touchdowns or he goes for 120, we're in good shape. I probably won't play Andrews. I could play Jackson with Zay Flowers if that works out. That's probably the only way that I stack. It's just like a one-man stack. But I do like running it back. So like if I do want this game to shoot out, I think Lockett's the guy that I want to run back from Seattle. 6,200 is a little bit expensive, but again, in the context of the slate, I don't think it's like reaching. So I do like Lockett coming back for Seattle. Played a good bit of Seattle last week and it worked out. But yeah, for me, it's really just like a one-man, or I guess you would consider a 2-man stack. But Jackson with Flowers, I would not go 3 or 4 man. This isn't really a spot I think you can jam in, four guys from this game, even as a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, tomorrow is OBJ's birthday narrative. I love that. I love that for Odell because I just feel like any extra motivation can matter. Obviously, he took a shot on the ribs last game, disappeared for a minute. But if there was a spot, 3,800, you said it last week, Snyder. He could be a guy at low ownership, but I'm with you, Drew. You look at Seattle side, Charbonnet is getting more and more work. Kenneth Walker kind of nursing an injury. They're splitting that backfield. You look at the Seattle side, you got 3 wide receivers who can make some noise. It's hard to pick out which one. Even the tight end position with Noah Fant can get involved. Geno Smith hasn't looked great. So honestly, to me, Seattle is just one of the grosser sides for DFS just in general. And in Baltimore, you got 3 guys, but it doesn't stop us from Rashad Bateman getting a catch. And Nelson Aguilar, if he's even in, right? And then all of a sudden, you just got a whole mess there, too. I don't blame you for not wanting to stack it up. I don't think a run back is necessary if you do stack it up, because that's what Chris Hawshow you were asking there. But yeah, Lockett can make sense. And Yeah, I think you guys hit it on the hammer, nail on the hammer there, whatever it is that saying is called. But Flowers number one, and then I think Andrews and Lamar can be secondary for me. I don't mind stacking those two up though, because I just think there's not a whole lot of great spots in this slate, and getting a team with almost 25 team total right now definitely can go above 30. I'll fiddle with that in the Ravens stacks. The next game is going to be very popular, and I didn't know this coming in, Snyder, until you told me, because I haven't looked at ownership once yet. And there's 4 guys in this game projected for over 20% ownership, and this is the Washington Commanders and New England Patriots. Those 4 players, Demario Douglas, Terry McLaurin, the Patriots defense, and Ramondre Stevenson projected for 21% ownership at 5,400. That's a very soft tag, and that's not to mention Sam Howell is also approaching double-digit ownership for a quarterback, which is very high. Washington has been horrible against the pass. I mean, we just saw A.J. Brown go nuclear last week. We saw Devontae Smith get 99 yards and a touchdown last week as well. Mac Jones sucks. But, I mean, at the same time, it's like these wide receivers are so cheap. Demario Douglas has talent. They loved what they saw in training camp and preseason. Obviously had a fumble on his last primetime slate against the Dolphins that saw him bench. But there's talent there. And with Kendrick Bourne sideline, and is Devontae Parker out as well? Is this also what's influencing it? Is he in? Let me see.
Who's that?
Devontae Parker.
He's out.
I think he's out. Yeah.
There you go. So a huge portion of these Patriots snaps have just opened up immensely. So that explains a lot. And then Juju Smith-Schuster is only 3,100. The entire Patriots wide receiving core outside of Douglas is 3K or 3.1K. That is just so cheap for a team in this spot. A 22-point team total as well. Snyder, are you interested in stacking this up? And is this game, should it be this popular, or are you selling it?
Yeah, I think it's a fine option there. Even though the total is only 41, I think there's some good targets here, mainly based off the pricing. Sam Howell finally had a good game last week after putting up 10 and 18 the last 2 weeks. Put up 35 last week, and now he gets a good spot here. And then Mac Jones on the other side, he's 4.9K, but Washington just gave up their two big pass rushers in Sweat and Young, so he's gonna potentially have a very, very clean pocket to throw from this week. I think he's interesting at 4.9K. Never thought I would mention his name on a show this year, but here we are, 4.9K. I'll have him in the player pool for sure. Stack him up with Douglas at 4K. Douglas is just seeing too much work, I think, for the price tag. 4K flat. He's got decent props, 7 to 6 targets the last 2 games, so he's definitely in play there. It looks like the only competition he's going to have is probably Juju Smith-Schuster, who is pretty terrible, and then Thornton. Every New England receiver besides Douglas is 3K or 3.1K, so that should tell you enough. I do like Douglas there. I like Jahan Dodson quite a bit. I played him last week some. He was on the flow chart last week, the Big T puts up, so I had some Dodson. He put 27.8 points last week, cut 8 of his 10 targets, over the 100-yard bonus, found the end zone once. I think he's going to be lower owned than McLaurin again this week, so definitely going to go back to Dodson for the savings there of $600. And then at tight end here, we've got a Logan Thomas at 3.5. He's still at 3.5. He's been pretty solid as of late. Besides that one game 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, everybody was going to play him. He caught 1 catch. But since then, he's 6 catches, 4 catches, 9 catches. I mean, he's been serviceable. And for that price tag, if he can somehow get you 15 like he's been getting a couple times here recently, I mean, that'll put you leaps and bounds ahead of everybody here. I think a lot of people will try and punt it off at tight end here because there's just a bunch of names there at the 3K range: Schultz, Logan Thomas, Trey McBride, Jay Ferguson, Njoku. So I think that ownership should get pretty much spread out there. I think Thomas will be like 10 to 15%, but that's fine. I do like some pieces in this game. I just don't want to get like a full game stack. I want to be picking and choosing 2 or 3 guys from this game, I think, though, on a decent amount of teams.
Yeah, 100%. I can see that. And Drew, when I pull up Big T's positional flow chart sheet, there's 2 players in what he calls the nut spot. That is Mac Jones. Like you said, Snyder, you mentioned that. Mac Jones and Hunter Henry / Mike Gesicki. Yeah. Now, Demario Douglas is going to get a lot of ownership. Are you interested in those pair of tight ends? And are you interested in stacking the Patriots? My initial gut reaction is that you would be, based on what you said on previous shows, because the stacks are so cheap. And with a team with a low 20 team total that 4 touchdowns, not out of the question at all. You're getting so much upside for so little price, and then you can stack up the studs in other places.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't shy away from some chalk pieces. Obviously, getting carried away, stacking up all the chalk pieces would be a disaster, I think, for lineup construction. But yeah, you're right on. Like Mac Jones at 4,900, he's going to be around 7% owned, probably less. But his receivers are all going to be up there, and then you got Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, excuse me, very cheap and quite low owned. So you're basically just taking the variance side of it and saying like the red zone targets or any of the touchdown targets are going to go to some of the tight ends over Douglas getting 100 yards and a couple TDs or something like that. So it could definitely swing that way, and that would be a pretty good leverage spot, to be honest. But I wouldn't fade Douglas in this spot. Obviously, he should get a lot of production. Stevenson as well. I mean, Stevenson actually, his targets have been ticking up quite a bit. Like, honestly, he's not getting a lot of rushing attempts. His targets should go up, and I expect that to happen again tomorrow. So, yeah, Stevenson 5,400, I think, is still in a really good spot. And then the Washington side is really interesting. Like I've talked about a lot on the show. Some weeks worked out, some weeks don't work out. But I mean, Howell, McLaurin, Logan Thomas has been great. I mean, honestly, the Washington side has actually been putting up some pretty good points, and New England isn't really that great anyway. So I do like this game environment for both sides to put up some points. And like you said, I would just be careful, I guess, from a lineup construction. They are so cheap; it's so easy just to get overexposed to the cheap guys. And if one or two dud, that can ruin the whole stack. So just be cautious. But yeah, you're right. I do like Mac Jones. Throw him in with a cheap tight end from New England. Gives you a little bit of leverage there. But the Washington side, I wouldn't shy away from. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington actually wins this game. So Washington, Logan Thomas, Terry McLaurin with Sam Howell, I like quite a bit.
Perfect. And I do want to mention Ramondre Stevenson getting 58% of the work, or 58% of the snaps last week. Ezekiel Elliott 42%. Zeke's price is 4,400, and if you really want leverage off Ramondre Stevenson, Zeke could be an option if you need a cheap guy in the running back position. I'm not sure if that would be the case or anything like that, but I do want to make it known that split is closer to 50-50 than the ownership is going to indicate. And if you do want a leverage play, there is something in that. Obviously, Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, both leverage plays off the chalk. Demario Douglas, as you mentioned. And then all of a sudden, flipping over to the Washington Commander side, yes, someone put in the chat, Jahan Dotson, good leverage off McLaurin, but even Dotson's approaching double-digit ownership as well.
Yeah.
Dotson showing out last week was very nice to see. We've always known he's had the talent. He had a great training camp, a great preseason, and then it took him 8 weeks to get going. So I don't mind thinking that maybe Dotson gets going. Obviously, last week, we don't want to get carried away because that spot against the Eagles is extremely good. This spot against the Patriots, albeit the Patriots defense having looked pretty bad over the last 6 weeks. They've also played some pretty good opponents in the Bills and Dolphins of late. They limited them a decent amount, and the Commanders are only applied a 19-point team total. I don't think you have to game stack it. I think you can just stack the Patriots side, just be cheap there, and then just kind of move on. But if you are feeling inclined to run it back, yeah, I don't mind these wide receivers at all. But I am surprised to see McLaurin's ownership so high. Last week was a very good spot. This week is not an extremely good spot by any means at all. And I don't know. It's just a low team total. I think there's better options in the 5,600 range. And you just look at this matchup here, too. I mean, let's check it out. It's a solid matchup on the flow charts. I guess it's not the worst thing in the world, but I don't know. Just surprised to see Washington so high owned. I think maybe people forcing runbacks could be why, I would think. Next game, though, the Rams and Packers. So this one is a little bit difficult because Jordan Love has been really inconsistent. However, we do get news that Aaron Jones is having, what was it called? The leash is being taken off or something like that. He's going to be full loose or whatever it is. The hamstring's fine. He's going to get cut loose. That's what it was. He's going to get cut loose. James Harden was the one who says he was on a leash in Philly. Aaron Jones getting a much-needed snap increase and probably a much-needed usage load. I mean, that's going to be huge for 6,200 in a good spot here against the Rams. Cooper Kupp, as always, double-digit ownership. But one of the more popular defense options this week will be the Packers defense as well. Do you think this one's going to be as low scoring as it indicates? Looks like this total's under 40 as well. Not great, Snyder, but there are individual pieces who could be fine. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. We got Darrell Henderson here, who's projected to be one of the higher-owned running back plays on the slate. No, that's not him. I was looking at someone else. That's a wrong game there. But Darrell Henderson is interesting there. I don't know if I'll play either of these guys. They threw him in. I think McVay'll throw him in there, but I'm interested with the Aaron Jones call here. I want to believe him, like you were just talking him up. I want to believe they're going to give him more usage. I want to believe that they're going to give him more snaps, but man, it's tough to swallow. I know he'll be really low owned. I think he's a great leverage play in tournaments, 6.2K, home favorite. This Packers passing attack hasn't been the best, so maybe they do lean on Aaron Jones here more. So I think he's a great million maker tournament play, though he should be really low owned. So I like the Aaron Jones call there for sure. I don't see too much here. It looks like Stafford's most likely out, so that's going to put Kupp and Nakua out of play for me there. I'm not going to touch those guys. I guess you could try and make Christian Watson work. I tried to play him last week, and it just didn't work out. He had 8 targets, just didn't do a single thing with them, 3 for 33. So I'm going to be out on him this week after last week. Really not much here for me at all. A Musgrave 3-3. I don't see myself getting there. I could get on the Green Bay defense though if Stafford is out. I think the defense here could be good from the Packers there. They had 3 sacks, 1 sack, 4 sacks the last 3 weeks, so they get some pressure on them. I think that's an interesting 2.8K spin there.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously playing the backup quarterback if Matthew Stafford, it happens to be out, and it looks like he will be. That is definitely going to be huge. It's going to play a factor into why this defense is so popular too. The Packers defense being around 12% owned probably goes higher, honestly. I do want to point out that Aaron Jones is cheap on FanDuel as well. It's projecting for 16% ownership. Just a little little fact right there. 6,400 on FanDuel is really cheap. Drew, are you interested in the Aaron Jones thing, and are you interested in that Packers defense going against a wounded Rams offense?
Yeah, but I'm interested in both sides. I mean, Brett Rippon, we just don't know what he could do against the Packers. So obviously the defense from Green Bay makes a lot of sense. But I want to take some Puka in this spot. 7,400, he's going to be 3% owned or less. Everyone thinks they're going to score, like 2 touchdowns and that's it. I mean, there's an avenue where that does not happen, and Brett Rippon gets rolling a little bit. So it can obviously flip. So obviously having some Green Bay defense exposure makes a ton of sense. There's a couple picks or gets pulled. Again, that's assuming Stafford's out, which I think he is going to be out. But yeah, I think these Rams guys are going to be so low owned that it makes a lot of sense to play them in tournaments. Green Bay, I'm not sold on Aaron Jones, 6,200. He's going to be pretty popular. I mean, I'll probably have him in my pool, but it's not like something I'm going to be jamming in everywhere I can find him. But man, the more I look at it, the Rams side just seems like there's a way it could get out of hand. That's unpredictable. And again, you're looking for that, second and third deviation above their mean, and Kupp and Nakua are both in those spots and are going to be so low owned. That's the exposure that I kind of want to have from this game. Otherwise, I think it's kind of an ugly game. If neither team moves the ball very well, it's just going to be one of those slugfests that ends up at 18-15 or something like that. So I hate it. Otherwise, I just want to jam in some Rams.
All right. Awesome. And I do want to mention we are 3 followers away from 21,000 on Twitter. So if you aren't following us on Twitter, please do so right now. Maybe get us above 21,000 during the show, and also hit the like button for me, please, if you are enjoying the show. And also code NBA15, 15% off your first payment here at Run Pure Sports. Not just NFL, not just NBA, but every single sport that you want to play, we have it covered. So perfect. We are already through 3 games, and we have 7 more to go. And this next one is the Bucks and Texans. It's a little bit different. Devin Singletary is projected for a ton of ownership with Dameon Pierce out. Singletary should slot into the RB1 role. I haven't seen any coach speak, but I would imagine it's close to a bell cow role for Singletary, and that's what's intriguing. Rachaad White has been getting a ton of the work for Tampa. He's also gotten things going the last few weeks as well, which is good to see. The Texans play a pace-up game. Stroud has dipped just slightly over the last few weeks, but not too concerned. This game kind of profiles to be more of a pass funnel for the Texans. So maybe kind of getting exposure to this attack could be nice. Snyder, what are you doing with the Texans-Bucks game?
Yeah, this was the game I actually had clicked on before last game, and I was looking at Singletary, and I was looking at split screens there, but Singletary is the guy I think will be the highest owned running back on the slate potentially. I think there's going to be like 4 guys that are right in that 27 to 31% range, but Singletary's 4-3. He's a cheap guy that everybody's going to go to, I think. He makes sense here. I actually like Rashard White quite a bit more, though. Been playing him a little bit as of late. He's been doing all right the last couple games, 15 and 17 points. Maybe he can pop here a little more. He's been getting a little usage in the passing game, too. I like Tampa Bay from a betting standpoint in this game as well. So naturally, I'm going to be on some of these Tampa Bay guys. I think Baker Mayfield is a fine option. Doesn't really jump off the page at you, but 5'2", he's got some upside. He's been more mobile too as of late, so 5'2" with a little mobility there. I do like some Baker Mayfield this week. He was 21. He's had a game of 23. He's had a game of 21, so he's showing a little bit of upside there. So that's the guy I'll be looking at 5'2" for a cheaper guy as well. You can stack him up with you got Godwin 7K, you got Edwin 7.3. You can stack him up with either of those two if you want. I think my proper run back would be Nico Collins at 5'8". He showed some upside recently, but at the start of the year, but the last game or two, he's been at like 7 points or 12 points or something like that. Hasn't really popped off for that 30 plus like we saw earlier in the year. So he'd be my preferred run back. I know Woods is gonna be out again, so that should bump some usage too. Collins and Dell again there. So I like White over Singletary, but I'll probably still play some Singletary. He'll definitely be in the pool there for sure. I don't think he's got huge upside, though. He's averaging 3 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry, 3.6. So I think he would average right around 4 yards a carry if he gets 15 carries. I mean, I really don't think it'll break the slate. I don't think he'll break the slate if you fade him. So I'm not too worried about fading him in some like single entries and such where he'll be massively popular, I think. So I like Rashard White the best in this game, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And Drew, what are you doing with this Devin Singletary chalk? You buying it or selling it at 4,300? Super cheap.
I mean, I'll probably have some. I'll probably be overweight a little bit actually at 4,300. Just the way things shake out. This game is great, man. I honestly, the Houston side, I'm higher on the Tampa Bay side. I just think they're getting underprojected a little bit in this game environment. Like Snyder said, Baker Mayfield at 5,200 makes a lot of sense when you pair him with Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Rashad White's in a good spot. So I'm pretty high on the Tampa Bay side, to be honest. But the Houston chalk scares me a bit. I mean, I'm going to have some, but like Schultz is chalk, Nico Collins is chalk. Obviously, we just talked about Singletary. CJ Stroud, surprisingly, I don't think is going to get much ownership, which is interesting. So I'm not sure how the other players on Houston can get so much ownership without the QB being involved. But I guess people click those buttons. So yeah, for me, I do like the Tampa Bay side. I think this game environment, obviously it's a close spread. I think that both teams score in the upper 20s, and it's somewhat of a shootout. Tampa Bay is just known to do that, and we just need Baker Mayfield to get it going. But yeah, Houston side looks great. So I would play Nico Collins first from Houston. But for me, man, I'm really leaning into the Tampa Bay side. Mike Evans is liable to put up 40 points. Obviously, pair him with Baker Mayfield. I love it. And then Rashad White makes a lot of sense. Rashad White and Devin Singletary I wouldn't play together for obvious reasons, but they're also very, very popular. So I wouldn't play two chalky running backs from the same game together either. And I don't think that really makes sense from a game script. So I would pick one of those. But for me, man, Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield is probably my favorite pairing.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I mean, Singletary is definitely more profiles as a pass catcher than Dameon Pierce does. And Singletary has been the guy who's been getting a lot of work in the pass game too when they need it. And Rashad White has been very effective through the air. So a trailing script would be best if you play one of those guys because you're hoping they get 4, 5, 6 catches. And it's definitely in the cards for either of them. The Dalton Schultz chalk, I don't know.
It hurt me last week. I got to go back. I can't quit it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I played him last week, man. It sucked.
It's the ownership that just gets me because he's hit double digits 3 times in a row, right? But there's been games where he just has a basement floor, and it's not like he's super cheap. I mean, 4,200 for a tight end.
He just needs touchdowns. That's the problem.
Correct.
He doesn't get their own volume like some of the other tight ends. So
yeah,
like I said, man, recency bias. He fucked me last week, so I might as well play him again.
He's been solid.
He has been solid. I mean, there's no complaining. It's just like I forget. Two weeks ago, we talked about somebody that was a flop lag. It might have been Hal. I think I talked about Hal, and he put up like 4 points, and the next week he comes back and scores 30. So
if you could give me any tight end that scores 15 points, even at 5K, I would lock him in every lineup. I would lock him in every lineup.
Yeah.
I like it.
Once he's Travis Kelce, you paid $9,000 for him.
So, just to continue with the flow of tight end talk, I'm actually going to skip these two games here. And I'm going to immediately go over to the Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons. And the reason being is because TJ Hawkinson, normally at 5,200, without Justin Jefferson, you'd be slamming him in your lineup. It would be so fast, you wouldn't be able to say no. But Kirk Cousins is hurt, right? And now people are going to react. He is only projected for 15% ownership in the best spot possible for tight ends. The wide receivers are covered very well for Atlanta. Usually they do a great job covering up. Guys like Jordan Addison and stuff like that won't have a huge week. But TJ Hawkinson, with Jaron Hall as his quarterback, I'm going to be buying that. And I want to get your guys' opinion on that. And also, the cheapest we've seen, Bijan Robinson, 6,100, projected for over 21% ownership. It's not a terrible spot at all by any means. I am shocked to see that we are getting 21% ownership on him after what we've seen Arthur Smith do over the last couple of weeks. Got his first rushing touchdown last week, though. Snyder, what are you doing with Bijan and TJ and even the rest of the game, if you so dare?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here with Bijan. He had a couple good games earlier, but it's just a comment. It's just a bunch of just guessing on who's going to get the touchdowns here, who's going to get the usage. I expect Algier only played 15 snaps last week, but he's been in that 25 to 30 range pretty much the whole year. I think you still see them I think you actually see both of these running backs actually on the field at the same time at times with Drake London. He's out in this game, so maybe they use Bijan more in the passing game. So I could see both of them actually on the field at times this game. So I may have a little Bijan. I don't think I'm going to be over the weight, maybe right at the field or under the weight on him. The price tag is very tempting. The upside is immense here. So it's definitely a talking point there. I talked about Cam Akers last week starting to take over the role from Madison. He found the end zone last week. Still only played about 20% of the snaps, but potentially I'll just keep watching him because I think Akers, before the season's over, I think Akers will take over this role from Madison because I don't think Madison's any good. But that's something to keep an eye on there if he keeps improving there. I don't know if I can get on the Hawkinson, though. I think Jaron Hall is pretty bad personally, but TJ Hawkinson is such a freak, though. He's going to see such a high target share. I mean, he's probably going to see 8 to 12 targets again like he has over the last month or so. So definitely can't knock you for going there. It just comes down to if this Minnesota Vikings team is able to get in scoring position and score some points or not. Will be the main thing. I don't mind the play there. I just don't know if I'll get there. Kyle Pitts is 4-1. That's a little too cheap for him, or too expensive, too steep for him there.
Really?
I won't be on him there either.
You don't like Kyle Pitts with Drake London out and a new quarterback.
How many times have I tried to jam Kyle Pitts in my lineup over the last 2 years? It's never ended well. He does have double-digit points twice this year, so I mean that's something to build on.
Johnny Smith was already leeching some TDs from him, wasn't he? Like 2 weeks ago. Did Johnny Smith get in the box?
Johnny Smith been outperforming them for the long term, like over the whole season. Johnny Smith has more fantasy points, yeah, for sure. So I just don't know if I can get there on either of those guys. It's kind of a cross-off game, just like a one-offs from this game would be for me. Maybe I can get some in there. Maybe you could play some Brandon Powell if you're looking for like a punt there at 3-2. I think that's pretty thin, though. I really don't like anything from this game, honestly, though.
Yeah, makes sense there. I mean, I'm going to buy Kyle Pitts. Drew, I really want your opinion here. 4,100 for Kyle Pitts with Taylor Heineke taking over the reins as quarterback there. I would think that helps because Desmond Ridder has been not fun to watch. And I also need your TJ Hawkinson take as well. As also, I'm going to throw in a little caveat. Tyler Algier, chalk pivot or huge leverage off a very chalky Bijan Robinson. Is that too deep or is that just right?
It's probably too deep for me. But I'll give you my Hawkinson take. So the thing that I do like about tight ends, especially when new quarterbacks come in, is the reliability for tight ends. Like I honestly, you try to get somebody acquainted with the system or get in the flow of the game, you're going to put them into a spot where they can get some confidence built up. And the tight end usually does that, especially a guy like Hawkinson. You can toss it to him a couple of times, get a few catches, and it starts building up the confidence. That's really all it takes for some of these younger QBs when they get their first start. So I do like Hawkinson in this spot just from a 5,200 perspective. He's going to be pretty low owned. But to Snyder's point, man, it's going to be a lot of one-offs. There's no stacking here. But I do want to defend Hawkinson because, the quarterback, I think he can get there on volume alone. At 5,200, a lot of it can be just volume. He could go for 11 catches. He could get in the box, would be fantastic, but he could get there for 11 and 100. I do like Hawkinson I do like tight ends when you get a new QB under center. So Kyle Pitts, 4,100. I haven't been playing a ton of him. This would probably be a good spot to plan because a lot of the other Atlanta players, Bijan, I guess, would be the main one, would be getting a lot of ownership. So trying to get different elsewhere. I'm not going to be buying into Mr. Robinson tomorrow. So overall, I'm semi-low on this game. It would just be one-offs and picking pieces. But I could see where you could get carried away and wanting to stack this because they could. I mean, both teams aren't really that great anyways. They could. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, and you're basically just kind of betting on the variance that this gets into a crazy shootout, and it's possible. It is possible. So I'll play some Hawkinson. I'll play some Pitts. I won't play Bijan, and that's probably it, man. It's really just kind of an ugly spot.
Yeah, 100%. And when you see the words Van Jefferson now, the number one in Atlanta, you can definitely tell that it's not a great spot. He will be the number one wide receiver, but what does that get you? Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith might lead the team in targets easily, or you could even be Bijan Robinson in some cases. And I made something for you, Snyder. So it's Kyle Pitts Smash Week is here, and you're walking away from the table. You're 1 week away, and you're 1 day away. You're less than 24 hours away, and you're going to walk away from the table from a Kyle Pitts.
I love that meme.
Come on now. This is Kyle Pitts week without Drake London in a good spot. A new quarterback. Everything is solved. The only issue is that Arthur Smith is still in charge. But we can always bank on variance. 4,100.
What if Kyle Pitts is on the bottom of that picture and Jonnu Smith's on top?
Hey, we're talking leverage. Not that we need a ton of leverage off Kyle Pitts, but Jonnu Smith has definitely vultured his fair share already and has been the number one tight end in some games. But yes, very fun there. And I'm with you guys completely. I do really like TJ Hawkinson. I just think Jaren Hall is going to rely on him a lot early. I think he's going to be open the most. And the only concern with TJ Hawkinson at that price is that Atlanta gets out ahead. The Vikings continue to go 3 and out. And they just don't get too many plays in because we already know the Falcons love to burn the clock. They love to slow the game down. And that's my fear, is that the Vikings either A, don't trust them, or B, it's just a 3 and out fest. And the Falcons are just able to get through 4 drives. And all of a sudden, you're at halftime down 14. All right, so let's move back a couple games. So we have the Bears. Oh, boy. And the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints, Alvin Kamara has just absolutely been crushing. Last week, I don't know. I saw little red flags here at 8.1. I don't see the 26% ownership, where it's coming from or why it's there. I mean, I get it. You can definitely catch 15.
There's nowhere else to go.
There might not be anywhere else to go. That's the best part. We also have Chris Olave at 15% ownership, and then you can already forget about all the Bears except DJ Moore, projected for sub 5%. Not a great Bears spot. Obviously, being on the road with a rookie quarterback isn't the best thing in the world. And I believe it's Bagent this week, right? Is it? Okay, Bagent. Okay, perfect. So, we have that in there, and I mean, I need to know what you're doing with Kamara and Olave, Snyder.
Yeah, there's only five people priced 8K and higher this week when you're talking running backs and receivers this week. But Kamara is right there. I've been playing Kamara pretty much every week as well, so I'm just going to keep jamming him in there. We get Kamara at home on the turf as a pretty big home favorite against a bad team, so definitely sign me up for some Kamara this week, 8-1. I'll just continue to keep jamming him in there. I'll take the 20 to 25 points he'll give me with upside. I think he's definitely got the upside to smash this week too. I think he's got a legitimate 20-point floor, so I'll just plug that in. And it looks like Chris Olave is going to be seeing some ownership too, pulling his stuff up right here. He's priced at 6.3. I think he's going to see a decent amount of ownership here, probably upwards of 20% ownership this week. He's a fine option here at home. Hasn't really smashed any this week or this year. Had 2 games over 20 points, but if he's going to be popular, I think I'll just play Kamara and get off Olave there. Maybe I'll keep playing. I'll throw some Shaheed in there as well. I played him a few times this year in the Million Maker. perfect play for the Million Maker format because he's either going to get you like 20, 25, or he's going to get you like 4. So you know your range of outcomes there with Shaheed. Either he's going to catch a bomb or he's going to dud for you, but he'll be 2-3% ownership probably, I bet, this week. So I think he's a fine option there if you want to play him. I'm not going to play anyone from this Bears team. I think the Bears get rolled here. The quarterback is not good. The players on this team are not good. So basically, it's just going to be like Kamara for me mainly. Maybe some Saints defense too. What's their price? 4-1. That's not terrible. I mean, I can play a Kamara Saints D, a little correlation there.
Yeah, I like it. And I don't disagree with you on Alvin Kamara completely because I do recognize the fact that we need stuff to spend up for. But Drew, I'm going to paint you a picture. All right. Are you going to spend 8.1K for a running back who got 50% of the carries last week, only caught 5 targets out of 29 throwing attempts, and they're going to likely lead the entire game, which means he might not get any targets at all? Now, I painted a pretty bad picture there. Obviously, you can phrase that a completely different way. You're going to play a guy who's just absolutely crushed the last couple of weeks, blah, blah, blah. I think there's a lot of red flags with Alvin Kamara, but I do understand that the safety is there. You know, you're not going to, whether it's winning or losing, you're likely going to have big touchdown upside, or you're going to have a floor in PPR, and that always helps to have. 8.1 just shocks me. That's all I got to say.
12 passes the game before, though, as well, and Carr's just going to keep dumping it off. It just comes down to how much Taysom Hill vultures from him is the main thing, I think. Yeah,
very true, very true. Drew, what are you doing with Kamara?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand your painted picture. It's not very good, but it's tough. It's tough. 8,100. I think to Snyder's point, people want the floor, and I think there is still a pretty solid floor. I mean, he does get a lot of red zone work, man. I mean, that's they rely on him. Even the garbage, he kind of got a garbage time TD, I think, last week, right? Like it was late in the game. They were just kind of moving it up, just trying to hold on to the lead, and they got inside the 10. They just said, okay, we'll run it in. And he gets a touchdown and gets there. Otherwise, he wasn't going to make it. He wasn't going to get there last week outside of that. Looking through like some of the other running backs, I was just concerned about the RB position scarcity. But like, I mean, outside of Jacobs, Saquon Barkley has a similar projection. They're all going to be pretty popular. So I don't know who you would really be trading for unless you just think he's going to fail from an ownership perspective. So I think there's just enough, scarcity at the position. Kamara's going to be clicked. He's just going to fall into your player pool. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I just think at 8,100, I think it's kind of a moot point because the other people at running back are either at a similar price, just under him, with a similar projection, or you're going to go down to a cheaper price with the same ownership, and you're just saving salary basically. So it's just like you're kind of trading off ownership for price. But otherwise, I don't really like this game. I mean, Olave is okay. I think the Saints defense with Kamara or without Kamara is fine. Saints against Chicago sounds like a good deal. But I'm not really interested in Chicago. I'm not really interested in most of the New Orleans side anyways. Michael Thomas is kind of too expensive in my opinion. He's been doing better, but at 4,700, like we just talked about, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that other players can vulture touchdowns. And Taysom Hill could be one of those. I think he was on the Million Maker lineup last week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 touchdowns on 9 carries last week, and also a catch. It's interesting.
Yeah. So I wouldn't just unclick. I wouldn't just exclude Kamara, but I get your point. But I think if you were to go look through the running back pool, you would find a lot of other running backs with similar projections with the same ownership. And I'm not sure what you're really trading off besides you just thinking he's just not going to make, he's just going to fail. That's the only way. It's just, you have inclination that he's going to fail in this spot.
And I think I'm glad we had this discussion. All right. I'm glad that we broke it down. This is what we did on the Thursday Night Football slate, right? Is that you guys were able to convince me. But if you said Thursday Night Football, hey, 3 running backs are going to be optimal, people would have scoffed at you. People would have said that's stupid. But then when you realize the pricing and stuff, there was no pass catcher in between 4,200 and 8,400, right? 3 running backs, especially 2 of them, 2 backups with sizable roles, was more likely than it ever would be. And then when you break it down to where there's not a whole lot of spend ups, there's not a whole lot of spend up running backs just in general. You're either at Kamara or Saquon, and both are projected pretty high. It makes sense in this case. And a guy who hasn't gotten less than 17 in this spot makes sense, right? And even with Taysom Hill vulturing 2 touchdowns last week, here's where the picture gets really painted very well. Kamara still crushed, got 2 touchdowns on his own. And one of those was due to a fourth quarter run. That was a long one that got him there. But I understand now where you guys are coming from. And it is against the Bears matchup, which is very good. And you have a floor or upside either way. Come on. So that's nice. All right. We move on from Kamara talk. We spent a nice little bit of time on that. Now we move over to the Arizona Cardinals with a team total. Oh, God, is it that low? 13? That is gross. And the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson back after this is the worst or the most guilt he's ever felt over the last week not being out there for his team. I couldn't believe that quote. But he said it. And now we also get a running back situation in Cleveland with Jerome Ford at 5,300 in a great spot. You have Kareem Hunt getting no ownership at 5,500. And a Browns team total that is at 25, but no one's wanting to play it outside David Njoku. Snyder, I imagine you don't have any interest in Arizona, but do you have interest in the Brown side of things? And maybe you do have interest with Cardinals because of Trey McBride, right?
Yeah, I think I may get talked into actually playing some Deshaun Watson this week. He's going to be under 5% owned, I think, this week. Everybody's going to be scared to go there. But I think this is a game where he's in the nut matchup here, a big home favorite. I think this is a spot where he can kind of come out and have a game for once. He put up a couple good games early in the year, 20-plus points a couple times. But I think we see Watson to Cooper be a pretty popular thing that we see this week. Not in terms of ownership-wise, just I think they're going to be connecting all sorts here and there. He had some good games earlier with him. Cooper has been all right lately. I mean, he's 11 targets, 8 targets, but he just hasn't really done much with them. Last week got 6 for 86. I think he's definitely in play here at 6.1K. Should be under 10% owned for sure, I think. I think the stack is going to be relatively low owned as well. So I like going there. And you can always either do a double or just play Elijah Moore as a one-off or something too at 3.9. I do think that's more of a chance that you could see a double hit the optimal this week with only 10 games and all the studs off the game. Like last week, I think it was just a single that was on the Million Maker winning team. I think this week we could see a double on the Million Maker winning team, and I think it's highly possible this week with the way these games set up. So I like some Watson to Amari. I don't think I played Trey McBride in cash. I played Trey McBride pretty much everywhere last week, but I don't know if I'm going to get back to this week because I think a lot of people are going to go there. It's just a spot where I'd rather play some of those other cheapies down there. McBride will probably be, I guess he's not going to be terribly highly owned, but
they're also favored last week, I think.
Yeah, the chances of him duplicating that, and he got a lot of that late in the game too. So I think the median or the mean of his outcome is going to be closer to that 5 to 8 points like he had been putting up. So I think I'm going to be off of McBride this week if he's going to kind of be a little bit talked up and such. Don't really have much interest at all on the Cardinals side, but I do like some of these Browns though for sure. Maybe even the Browns defense as well. They're priced at 4.2. I mean, that's not terrible.
Yeah, not at all. Not terrible at all going against who's it going to be? You said Clayton Tune is going to be the quarterback.
I think Tune is.
He sucked. He sucked in college. I hated watching it. For Houston, that was terrible. But anyway, let's see, Drew. I got Jerome Ford here, splitting the snaps, and there's also a 5.3K price tag. We talked about how we already have good value at running back, but this is a good spot for him, right? The fear with Jerome Ford would be that Pierre Strong is actually carving out this role as the third running back in this team, and that's what's making this offense so meh, I would say. There's also the things where I want to get your take on Deshaun Watson. Obviously, the last time he started, he ended up getting a little bit of ownership and got hurt in the first quarter, or hurt, as they say, whatever it was. He's 5,400 and a great spot here at no ownership. Are you interested, or are you going to buy into the injury is going to limit him?
No, I don't think it's going to limit him. I'm going to play some Watson with Snyder here. I think Watson with Amari Cooper makes a lot of sense. Again, it's like the projections don't really align with the 25-point team total right now, at least in my opinion. It just kind of doesn't make sense. So, Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper is probably my preferred go-to in this game. I don't think I'm going to touch any pieces from Arizona. 13 seems a little bit of a fishy line, but I mean, they're probably at least directionally accurate. So I'm going to stay away from Arizona in this spot for all pieces. As far as the running backs for Cleveland, it's a stay away from me, man. Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, no thanks. Jerome Ford would be the guy you would play, but I still don't trust that workload split. So I'll be staying away. Like you mentioned, Pierre Strong possibly coming in makes it even worse. So for me, it does look like a pretty good team total, but it's really just two people that I want to target: Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper. David Njoku's cheap enough. I mean, you could make it work if you want to do a 3-man stack. But I think for this game, Cooper's expensive enough. I think if I could just pair him with Watson, that could be all the upside that I want if they're the ones that are getting all the production tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Glad you broke it down there. I mean, you're exactly right. For a team that's projected for 25 points, you would assume that they are projected more in line with the Bears than they are that. I mean, they might be the highest team total on the slate outside the Eagles. The Eagles,
they're up there. Yeah.
That is incredible. You're going to get ownership on a team that
doesn't make sense.
It's the highest team total on the slate, really, and ultimately is getting unowned, and their quarterback is super cheap. And I understand the red flags with it. I absolutely do, but it's intriguing without a doubt. And I'm glad that you guys brought it up. It's cheap enough to do doubles. It's cheap enough. Amari Cooper's only 6,100.
It's like a two touchdown spread almost. I mean, it's 12 points, so it's like a 2 touchdown spread.
Yeah, you're not kidding at all. That's a great point there that you guys made. And yeah, I think the Browns could definitely have a chance to be on the winning Millie Maker team tomorrow. On to the 4 p.m. games. We have 3 late games out of the 10 here, and we also have we're at 9:53 already. Code NBA 15% off your first payment. Make sure to get in. You can look at the positional flow chart that Big T posted on Twitter last week. He put it on the website as well. We have the Colts and Panthers, a game with a sneaky total on a slate like this, where you have it in the mid-40s. You have Adam Thielen at 7,500. Oh, my Lord. And he's also projected at 25% ownership. It's sneaking up there quite a bit. You also have Pittman getting ownership. You have Jonathan Taylor in the high teens. Chuba Hubbard is named the starting running back. And last week, he dominated the workload. It was Miles Sanders, who was very much just benched. I think he only had 2 carries for no yards last week or whatever. Hubbard is the guy there at 5K. Josh Downs has looked really good of late. Snyder, this game has a little bit of potential. Are you doing more bits and pieces, or are you interested in stacking maybe?
I like Carolina in this game from like a betting standpoint. I think they win this game. They get a win here. I don't really have too much interest in like a DFS though. I think Thielen will be pretty popular. You could go there if you want. 7,500. That price tag is getting up there, and he's been kind of hit or miss lately. I mean, he's had 2 games over 30, 2 games at like 15. If he gets you 15 at 7,500, that's not going to pay off the tag there. So it's kind of I don't think he's bad, but I think I'd rather pay the extra for like an AJ Brown or something. Just continue to jam that. But I think I'll be off Thielen this week. You could look to like it looks like Downs may be out. So if he's out, you could look to even like an Alec Pierce at 3.3K. He's been decent. I mean, he's caught 3 passes in the last 3 games, and if Downs is out, I think that could be an interesting a guy to a target for a cheap price tag there at 3.3. So I think Pierce would have some interest from me. And then Jonathan Mingo is a guy I've been kind of keeping an eye on as of late, the rookie there. I think he's starting to carve out a role for himself there. 7 targets, 3 targets, and 5 targets last game. 4 for 63 last week. He's a guy that I'm definitely going to have in the player pool at 3.4K as well. He'll be very low owned as well. So I really like the 2 3K shitters there, as Bruce would say, in this game there. And I don't see myself really getting to any of these running backs. Jonathan Taylor, 6'4". You could go there if you want. He's still seeing barely half the snaps. So I think he had like 90 yards in the first half last week, and then had like 3 yards in the second half, which was kind of brutal for JT backers last week. But not too much here for me. Mainly just like those one-off 3K guys in the wide receiver position.
Yeah, 100%. And Drew, going back to that flow chart one last time, the nut position for running backs is against the Panthers here. Jonathan Taylor fits that bill at 6,400. Last week was very disappointing after a great first half, like you just mentioned, Snyder. He ended up not getting over the 100-yard mark, despite having an 80-yard rush or somewhere. And I don't know how that happened.
He had 90 in the first half, to be honest.
Yeah, he had no carries in the second half. I think this week it should change, right? And also, I just want to mention that Josh Downs is questionable. He was limited in both practices, not like he missed. I would assume that Josh Downs plays. But yeah, go ahead and give me your take, Drew, on this game.
Yeah, Downs was the guy that I was really focusing on at 5,200. I think he's getting the majority of the workload, so it just depends on if he plays tomorrow, if he's going to be limited at all. Jonathan Taylor, yeah, 6,400, and Adam Thielen at 7,500. Both guys that should be in play. It's tough. I think the theme of the show tonight has been like there's plenty of value everywhere you look in every single game, and there's really not going to be a difficult time getting up to a guy. Taylor 6,400 is relatively cheap. I think if you look at the other running backs that we just talked about, but even Thielen at 7,500, man, the workload has been so good. And even last week would be considered a dud, in my opinion. And he's still putting up 20 points. So I think Thielen in this game, I think like 45 is the game total under over. I think Thielen is probably in a prime position to hit the 25 or 30 point mark. So for me, I do like the Indiana side. Downs would be the target I'd be looking for. I think Pittman's still fine. Like I said, he's expensive, but there should be plenty of value for you to get to him. But it's just one-offs. Like I don't like stacking with Minshew. I'm certainly not going to go down to. I think Steiner mentioned Alec Pierce. I'm not going to play any of the cheap guys, so I'm a little bit different there. It's just kind of like the mid-price guys that I think can get there on a 45-point game. And it really just revolves around Jonathan Taylor, Adam Thielen, Josh Downs, and Michael Pittman.
Yeah, 100%. I'm trying to look at maybe if we had any coach speak on the Jonathan Taylor situation. After only one carry and one target last week, he disappeared in the second half.
Zach Moss, he always finds a way to get into the game. I mean, he's going to troll everyone again this week, probably.
So Colts coach Shane Steichen on the balance between Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss is, quote, "We try to ride the hot hand." So if you're wondering, 12 carries for 95 yards, averaging over 7 yards a carry, almost 8 yards a carry, is not a hot enough hand. It's almost like Arthur Smith there. But yeah, I think I'm gonna put my hand on the stove again. If I get burned with Jonathan Taylor, I'll yell "ow!" But then I have no one else to blame but myself. I know what I'm getting into. A game here that we have with the Las Vegas Raiders, the new look Las Vegas Raiders here after firing their offensive coordinator, their coach, and the GM. They walk into this game against the Giants here, and honestly, it's not as bad as it looks. You know, the total's in the 30s, but Josh Jacobs, 6,900. You know, this is what we were talking about, Drew. You said that these high-priced running backs with similar projections to Kamara, they all profile really well on the ownership. They all profile for really high ownership because they are such smash plays. Saquon Barkley, 20%. The Giants' defense, surprisingly, is 16%, only 2,300. There's a lot to like it, looks, Snyder, individually. I don't know about stacking this one up, but you got some good pieces here, and especially at the running back position. Are you going to have any Barkley and Jacobs this week?
I actually have a decent amount of conviction in this Raiders team. I think they're going to come in and roll. They're going to play for the new coach. You know, we see some of these situations where that new coach gets in there. The old coach they didn't like is fired, kind of rallies the team around. I actually like the Raiders to kind of put one on the Giants here. Aiden O'Connell looked fine on the road against the Chargers, and now he comes home versus a weaker Giants team here. I think he's fine at 4,500. I'll definitely have some O'Connell in there. I don't even mind pairing O'Connell with Josh Jacobs because he was targeting Josh Jacobs quite often in the dump-offs there in the game he did play against the Chargers. So 6'9" for Josh Jacobs. I do have some interest in him, and he looked better last week. And I don't think he was a big fan of McDaniels either. And I think he could see 20 carries in this game. They kind of take a little bit of load off of O'Connell, so they kind of put the ball more in Jacobs' hands, more so like I think we see him get 6 to 9 targets in the passing game and maybe 17 to 20 carries in the running game. So I like Josh Jacobs quite a bit here. And Saquon on the other side, I mean, he's probably going to catch a ton of dump-offs. They gave the ball to him last week. He touched the ball 39 times last week. So that's definitely – he's the bell cow for that offense. They're going to need to lean on him quite often in this game if they want to keep it close, I think, which makes that – it sounds kind of weird with a 1-point spread, but I think the Raiders are going to be hyped up to play this week. So I don't mind either of those running backs. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, you could maybe go back to. I mean, he hasn't done anything in a couple weeks, so probably too thin of a play there at 3.5K. I'd rather play the other 3K guys I mentioned in the week before. You always got Jalen Hyatt in there. He's one of those guys that could catch a Hail Mary or something. It's boom or bust with him. We've been trying to make him work on showdowns and such. He's fine if you want to throw him in there at 3K. I do think Michael Mayer sees a substantial increase in role here too. You get that new coach in there. You see what he's got there. Aiden O'Connell should look to target him more. I think they worked a lot in the preseason and such. So don't mind some Michael Mayer at 2.8K.
Yeah, it looks like the Raiders players are having some fun in the locker room as well. And Devontae Adams, a man at 8,100 with no ownership, but definitely had some disdain for that offensive coordinator and Josh McDaniels. Could this be the week that Aiden O'Connell just continues to pepper Devontae Adams, or am I being too hopeful here, Drew?
Yeah, I'm actually curious what they're going to do with Devontae Adams. He's obviously very negative on the system that they're running. So the guy that I'm actually looking to probably punt off in a couple lineups is Jacoby Myers. His targets have been all over the map, but he's put up 20, 17, 18 in 3 of his last 4. Last week was a dud. He put up 1 for 1 for 2.9 points. So Jacoby Myers on the Las Vegas side, I actually think I want to punt off in the Millie Maker, and he should be like 1% owned. The Josh Jacobs deal totally makes sense. I think Saquon Barkley's in a great spot, so I actually want to preference Saquon Barkley in this spot at 3,900. We just talked about spend ups and ownership. I mean, Saquon Barkley, $200 less than Kamara. He definitely could get there, and it could just be a 1v1 versus Kamara, and Barkley's the guy that you need. So I do like Barkley. I think Jacobs is fine. He's going to be super popular, so it does scare me off a bit. But he's gonna be in the player pool. Outside of that, man, there's not a lot of guys that I love. This isn't a game stack or even a single stack that I like. It's just one-off. So Wan'Dale Robinson I've been playing a lot of. I probably won't play him tomorrow. To Snyder's point, I think that's a little bit thin. It's just going to be relying on Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley for the most part. And like I said, if you want to punt off a couple receivers, Devontae Adams, I just don't think is going to get there. I don't know, man. They don't seem like they're really prioritizing him as he wants them to, and as we probably want him to. So this is kind of a weird game, man. I don't really love the outlook. Aiden O'Connell, 4,500 is crazy cheap. So I guess if you do play Adams, you probably want to play Aiden O'Connell at 4,500.
Yeah, 4,500 for a starting quarterback is super cheap. Daniel Jones is back from injury, 5,600 there. But yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson's projected for some ownership, 3,500. The Giants defense at 2,300 is just still like, I'm honestly going to be back in the Raiders here. I'll just take their spread too. I just think the new coach bounce, that little bit of energy. I think the locker room picture of Devontae Adams and them playing basketball, smiling in the locker room, I think it told me a lot. And I think I wouldn't surprise me at all if Devontae Adams went off for like a 10, a 120, and a touchdown game or something like that. I'll be high on Devontae Adams, and we also have some wide receivers in the next game that I will definitely be high on. But yeah, I think you guys summed it up very well. Barkley and Jacobs, definitely two pieces to consider. And what we saw last week, thank God Daniel Jones is back, because if you watched the Giants-Jets last week, you're probably blind this week. That was that bad of that football. But now we will move to probably the game of the day, the game of the slate, I should say, because the game of the day is the Kansas City Chiefs, Miami Dolphins, and then the Bengals-Bills at night too. But we get the Dallas Cowboys against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I will say this, the Eagles' defense last week was absolutely shredded by Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and then some. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson all went nuclear last week. A lot of pieces moving in the Cowboys' favor. My only fear with the Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy will try and bash Tony Pollard up the middle against this pass funnel defense in the first quarter, and I will be out of my mind. I will be going insane. But it won't stop me from playing CeeDee Lamb. After an amazing game last week, he is projected for 16% ownership. He is 8,200. And this spot against the Eagles should be continued to attack. I really like CD here. I don't hate A.J. Brown running it back. But Snyder, I'm going to be starting a lot of my lineups like Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Are you against me?
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Drew for that CD Dak call last week. But I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing. It's been the most profitable thing for me this year. I'm just going to jam Hurts and A.J. Brown and a lot of my teams again this week. I'm just going to keep – we got enough value on this slate where I'm just going to jam Hurts, A.J. Brown. You see the Cowboys, they've been beaten up like they usually do. They beat up on the bad teams, and then they roll into San Francisco and just get taken to the woodshed there. So I think we see another case of that where they do all right against the bad teams. They get matched up against a tough team here. I think the Eagles are going to cause pressure, going to put pressure on Dak and the Cowboys there. I think the Eagles roll here like we saw the Dolphins came in and everybody was kind of talking up the Dolphins there, and the Eagles just laid them down rather easily. So I think the Eagles be pumped up for this game. Maybe it was a little bit of a look ahead last week. That was kind of a trap game against Washington last week. And I thought the Rams actually got a decent amount of pressure for not really that good of a pass rush against Dak last week. So you're getting this tough Eagles pass rush. They got Carter back this week too. So I really like the Eagles here. I bet them on Monday at like -2, -2.5, something like that. But my favorite play in this game is going to be a Hurts double. But my guy Devontae finally had a decent game last week. He finally hit 20-plus points last week, 23 points last week, 7 for 99 and a touchdown. I think we see Devontae at under 10%. He's the guy you need in the Million Maker. This game kind of pops off. I don't even mind running it back with like a Brandon Cooks at 4-4. He's going to be another guy that's relatively unknown. Back-to-back games where he's found the end zone, so he's interesting. I know Ferguson's going to be a very popular option there at tight end. The pivot there is to pay $800 more for Goddard, who I think will be less owned than Ferguson. But Ferguson's a great play at 4K. He's fine if you want to go there. But I really like the Hurts double. I think we see the Hurts double on the Million Maker winner this week.
I like it. This game is very juicy, Drew. And I'm not as interested in the Philly side as Snyder is, but I do want to hear your take on that because I think it is stackable from both angles. We did talk about how the Browns were one of the highest team totals. The Eagles are the highest team total this week. A lot to like. Are you interested in just fully game stacking this one up?
Yeah, game stacking. Take stacks on either side, running back with one, running back with two, whatever you want to do. I mean, this is the best game on the slate, in my opinion. The trap last week for me was Dak with CeeDee Lamb, and I got the wrong punt, which was I played Gallup instead of Brandon Cooks. I had two lineups to pick for my main team, and I picked Gallup, and he went off for 4 points, I think. Yeah, and then Cooks gets a TD late, and I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't CeeDee Lamb. Who was it? No, it was Brandon Cooks. Unbelievable. But I mean, this game is it's a fantastic game environment. CeeDee Lamb's a great spin of AJ Brown again. There's plenty of value to get up to AJ Brown, so it makes a lot of sense. I mean, honestly, all the studs in this game are in a prime spot. So would not shy away from either of those two. And then obviously running it back with either Jalen Hurts, who's very, very expensive. Dak Prescott, obviously gives you a little bit of a value. I mean, the tight end, Dallas Goedert and Jake Ferguson, you could take on either side. So, I mean, through and through, I don't know how else to put it. I think outside of the running backs, I want a lot of pieces of the passing game in this game. I don't have a preference. I'm not on your side, Greg, or on Snyder's side. I just want both sides and see which one goes nuclear.
I just hope this game doesn't end up how that USC or Washington are playing right now. They had the two high-profile passing attacks. All the running backs are scoring all the touchdown. And
that's what they thought last week with Pollard, right? Like, I mean, they put up CeeDee Lamb puts up 50 points, and Pollard scores 8.
Yeah, I played Pollard in cash last week. It was hurtful. Swift here at 6'6" could be another leverage play, though. I mean, if you want to go into that narrative where it's running base, where it could happen. I mean,
that's the tough part with stacking is like it can be a game where like AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts gets everything. That's all the connections for touchdowns, and the passing production is AJ Brown. Or same thing with last week with CeeDee Lamb and Dak, and nobody else really gets there. And then you think, they scored 50 points. That means someone else has to get there. No, it doesn't work that way. And that's unfortunate. But yeah, this is a great game. You could stack, 3 or 4 people from one team running back with 1 or 2. I mean, it just seems like a great spot. But you could also just pick and choose, 2 guys from each team.
I think it all depends on Mike McCarthy. If Mike McCarthy comes out throwing the ball and being sensible and getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb, this game will be fun. If Mike McDaniel runs the ball 2 times and they go 3 and out in the first possession, like I said, I will go clinically insane, but I can already expect it. I'm going to mentally prep for it. But yeah, I think if they just come out throwing the ball and stuff, we saw it last week with Washington and Philly. There was a lot of plays in that game because Washington was also throwing the ball, but they were also completing every single pass. They were having an up tempo. Howell went 24-26 in the first half alone. I think the opportunity is going to be there. I think Dak Prescott on both sides is great. I think CD Lamb is just going to absolutely nuke. He is the positional flow chart in the nut spot. But yeah, I like Cooks, Gallup. I like double stacking here a lot. Cooks is only 4,400. Our guy Gallup is still 3,600. Like Gallup's bound to hit. They just got to. The only pass catcher on the Dallas Cowboys last week to not hit was Michael Gallup. So we're due in that sense. But yes, I agree with you guys. I think you can do 4 or 5 players from this game, even if you want to get really aggressive. And yeah, I think this is the game to stack up. Now, I can't let you guys go without getting your play of the slate. So we have 10 games to choose from. My only rule, and this rule will stay, has to be under 20% owned. So that eliminates about 10 of the chalkiest options. So Snyder, who is your play of the slate this week?
I'm going to look to a guy that I think could even be under 5%. I just kind of talked him up a little bit. I think I'm going to check in what Saber has in some other spots. I think he's going to be close to – Saber has him under 5%. Devonta Smith is going to be the guy that breaks the slate this week. Under 5% owned, 7.1K with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I know it's an expensive stack, but we got plenty of value. I think Devonta Smith nukes the slate.
I love it. Devonta Smith. Snyder's play of the slate. Drew, who is your play of the slate for the Week 9 NFL action?
You need me to spend some extra time? You got your play of the day already?
I got it this time.
Okay, you got it this time. Yeah, there's a couple, man, that are right under 20. I'm not going to go to those, but there's some good ones. I'm going to go Michael Pittman. Indiana, I like Indianapolis, and Pittman's the guy.
I like it a little bit, a lot of leverage off Jonathan Taylor. Could be creeping into the low 20s as well. Attacking that pass game is perfect. I like it. Michael Pittman. And we also had Devonta Smith. I will continue the trend with a pass catcher, but not a wide receiver. No. It is the one and only Kyle Pitts. Snyder might be jumping off the train 1 week early, but I will stay. It's Kyle Pitts week, 4.1K. He's going into this spot with no Drake London. He's going to smash. And I want you guys, if we don't win the millie, if it's not Snyder, if it's not Drew, if it's not me, I hope it's one of y'all who watch the show, and have a great rest of your slate and good luck tomorrow.